Good evening, all. Championship action is back for Norwich City, but a frustrating return to action. A minute, fifth minute of injury time. Sorry, concession, denying them a win. It really should have been a win, but a 1-1 draw at Preston at the end of a pretty unusual day. After everything that's been talked about in the last couple of weeks, all the international duty, the fresh injury problems for Ben Gibson and Christoph Zimmerman, but they were so close. Some really nice stories in the mix as well, because Barley Mumba and Andrew Bamadelli both came into the team today, young men, 18 and 19 years old, and on the whole, both did really well, but were both involved in that late equaliser. 4 minutes of added time had been shown, but that is a minimum, of course. Daniel Farke didn't want to make too much of a big deal of that after the final whistle, but it was a cruel way to snatch it away from Norwich. You know, there's no need to panic. Of course, they are 11 unbeaten. Watford did one. They won 1-0 at home Sheffield Wednesday, so they've cut the gap to 6 points. Swansea play in the late game this evening. They are now 15 points behind Norwich, but they could cut that to 12. So they could make things a little bit more interesting. They do still have a game in hand as well, but of course, Norwich is still in a brilliant position. If you have a look at a story at pinkham.com that uploaded this morning ahead of the game, which is by a website called The Analyst. They're linked to Opta, and it's all based on the Opta data. And ahead of the game today, they worked out that Norwich had a 99.5% probability of being in the top two this year. So, of course, you want them to win the title from this position as well, but they've got strong competition from Watford, who are in a really good seam of form as well. But the top two is the all-important thing, isn't it? You get that job done, and then you go on from there. But I don't think you can get stuck into Norwich too harshly. You know, maybe Teemu Pukki. He's had 3 big chances, fired wide 3 times, also hit the crossbar. Daniel Farke, again, talking about how disappointed Pukki was in the dressing room afterwards, because they should have had it wrapped up. They did manage to get control of the game. I mean, this is a good point to mention the stats: 66% of possession, 17 shots at goal, 5 on target, 9 for Preston and 1 on target. So the dominance was obvious, as you'd expect. Preston not in a great place. They'd only won 1 of 9 going into this match. Alex Neil had, of course, left. His former assistant, Frankie McAvoy, the former Norwich coach, had come in, and he has got a bit of bounce in the end, but they didn't deserve their point, really. They celebrated this like they'd won a massive game, and they hadn't. They'd managed to scratch home a deflected goal in the 5th minute of injury time. So it's an unfortunate day, but as I say, 11 unbeaten. You can't get too upset about it, really. It was Brad Potts scoring that. The goal for Norwich had been in the 17th minute. Emi Buendia, his 11th of the season, again using that left foot that we've seen quite a few times this season now. I'm not sure you could describe it in the sort of cliche of a weaker left foot, because he scored quite a few goals with it now, hasn't he? And as you can see from that photo, another lovely curled low effort into the bottom left corner, giving the keeper very little chance. And it was lovely. 11th goal of the season for Emi. So just to quickly go over the team, there were 4 changes overall. Max Aarons had a little bit of an ankle knock when he came back from England under 21s duty. Daniel's hoping that's not anything too serious, but it's Barley Mumba coming in. His first league appearance since November. You'll probably remember the Swansea game when he came off the bench, did really well, but then he got a knee injury. Javi Kintir came in at left back. Dimitris Giannoulis was fine, but he had a very hectic journey home. Greece's game on Wednesday night was a late finish. He had to get a connecting flight to Heathrow and got back. And Daniel said he basically had no sleep, and they decided it wasn't sensible. So Javi Kintir came in at left back, and it was Andrew Bamadelli getting the nod in central defence alongside Grant Hanley, because Jakob Sorensen was starting in central midfield alongside Kenny McLean. Ollie Skip was in the squad, came on, but they decided to keep him on the bench as he'd started all 3 England under-21s games. So that meant Grant Hanley and Kenny McLean both played 90 minutes on Wednesday for Scotland. Hanley had started 3 successive games, but they both played the full match. Pukki only played as a substitute for Finland on Wednesday in Switzerland, so he got the start and played most of the game. Todd Cantwell only features as a sub for the under-21, so he was fine as well. And that on top of those Zimmerman and Gibson injuries, that was the big talking point going in, wasn't it? And you've got to say, I'll say here at the top of the video, really, that Andrew Omobamidele, still man of the match. I don't think you can really give him any blame for the goal anyway. Probably Mumba takes more of the blame, because the ball is basically fired between his legs, and as he tries to close his legs to block the shot, it deflects slightly off him and then creeps in at Tim Krul's near post, who's unsighted, really. But up to that point, he'd looked so composed, good on the ball. There was one point earlier in injury time, it was the 4th minute, so only just before the goal, when he won a brilliant header as a corner came into the box as Preston desperately chucked the ball forward. And that was commanding, way beyond his 18 years and his first ever senior start. And we'd seen him a lot in youth football, under 18s, under 23s, and he's looked good. He's looked calm and composed like that. And by and large, he managed to reproduce that at senior level. Now, he could have the opportunity here with Zimmerman and Gibson. Gibson definitely not going to be back this season. Zimmerman probably not. You have got Sorensen and Teti as potential options. But given how he played today, I think Daniel Farke will stick with him, because I think he showed enough. As long as fitness-wise he can handle the Huddersfield game on Tuesday night, I think he really laid down a marker for a big future today in a difficult situation. So fair play to him. He's my man of the match. I'll give him 8 out of 10 in terms of ratings. Hanley as well, not particularly pretty, but a lot of blocks, got through all the aerial duels, as you would imagine with Grant. And just the situation, really, after playing so much football with Scotland, that 4-0 win, I think it was, against the Faroe Islands in Glasgow on Wednesday, that was a heck of a shift, a real captain's performance. And he did have to get through plenty of defensive work. It wasn't all perfectly tidy, but in the circumstances, a nice big 8 for Grant Hanley. And Emi Buendia as well. Clearly, I mean, most weeks we could probably say Buendia is the man of the match, because he's probably the best player on the pitch every time, isn't he? But again, the goal made a difference. He created chances for Pukki. Preston targeted him, there's no doubt about it. And there was some worrying talk from Daniel in the press conference after the game that they're worried that he had a bit of a bloody ankle. He wanted him to come off at half time, but Emi was determined to carry on, and he came out of the tunnel sort of limping. And I think it was 4 times when he was clattered, really. 2 players booked, if I remember that correct. No, only 1 player was booked for the tackle on him, which has led to some early doors. And yeah, he took a bit of rough treatment today, but he kept getting up. He nearly lost his rag a couple of times, but he managed to rein himself back in. And again, just a real attacking force. So 8s for those 3. 7, Tim Krul made a really important save at 0-0. Some important claims. Didn't really have much of a chance with the goal, but I go a 7 for Krul, who was in action for Holland in Gibraltar on Tuesday. Bali Mumba, a lot of good things today. Pretty much has continued that reputation as a potential long-term successor to Max Aarons at right back. The goal came in that 5th minute of injury time when Potts had controlled the ball in the box, Long just pumped into the air, and Mumba hesitated a little bit, really, and didn't stick his foot in, didn't get close enough. Potts was able to spin and get the shot in on goal. And then, as I just described a minute ago, on Omobamidele, the slight deflection takes it past Krul. And it was a really unfortunate way to have a win snatched from them. But ultimately, you can't moan about it too much when those chances have been passed up. So, you know, the Preston celebrations were over the top. They were lucky to get it. But Norwich, as cruel as it felt, they do have to take a lot of the blame for it, don't they? Because they should have made it. They should have put the game to bed at 1-0, frankly. So 7s, yeah. McLean, lots of energy. Pukki, I'm still going to give Pukki a 7, despite the fact that he's missed those chances. He was not far away at all. The one that cannons off the crossbar was only just in front of the line. The first attempt he had in the first half, that one was probably a poor miss from him after being sent through, as he so often is, by Buendia. But the one in the second half, when he's put through by Buendia, that was very close as well. It was a tight angle. He just sort of tried to spin it with a toe poke around the keeper, and it wasn't far from creeping in at the far post. It would have been a really good finish. So I'll still give Pukki a 7, and Cantwell just about a 7 as well. Kintyre, I'm going to go with a 6. I'm afraid not enough for him today. I don't think you can judge him too harshly, because that was his first league appearance since October. He did play in the FA Cup game against Coventry in January, but he's not played a lot of football, has he? And he did have those injury problems. So you wouldn't judge him too harshly. He was bright going forward, but his delivery wasn't as good as it had been early stages of the season. His set pieces weren't particularly great. Defensively, Hanley did have to cover him a few times, particularly in the closing stages. probably not a surprise if he was tiring at that point, but I don't think that was enough to be worrying Dimitris Giannoulis, and possibly today could have been a chance for him to press his claim for a potential stay in the summer, but that's probably not looking likely. But again, it's not fair to judge him on this game in isolation too strongly. Dowell, again, as I said previously, really, we saw him at Forest when he played instead of Buendia, when he's playing on that wide role and cutting in field like Buendia and Cantwell do, that he looked good. But that number 10 role we're seeing increasingly throughout this season, it's sort of an enabling role, and it's a person that knits things together and kind of doesn't do the spectacular work. That the flair is all from the wide plays, isn't it? The false tens, as Daniel Farker has called it. So Dowell a 6 and Sorensen a 6 as well. I didn't really feel like he took his chance today to sort of show that he could be an Ollie Skipp success. He was fine. He was okay. Didn't do a lot wrong, but I didn't feel like he was really offering too much control. If anything, it felt a bit too much like Kenny McLean was playing the Skipp role, the sort of unselfish defensive midfield role, and like Sorensen was just struggling to get onto the rhythm of things a bit. But he certainly put himself about, and it wasn't a bad performance or anything, but I didn't feel like he laid down a marker for moving forward with that one. But yeah, I think that will just about do for the events of the game. That's pretty much everything covered. Frankie McAvoy probably does deserve a bit of praise in terms of he got all his subs on before the 71st minute, made a triple substitution, and eventually they did find their rhythm. They didn't start playing good football or anything. They just started pumping the ball forward and eventually found the breakthrough. But maybe Daniel could have just used his subs a bit more. He brought on Stiepermann for Dowell in the 72nd. Skipp came on for Buendia, who by that point was struggling, in the 82nd. And then Hugo and Onel Hernandez replaced Pukki and Cantwell in the 89th minute. They didn't even use the 5th substitution, and perhaps they could have just freshened things up a little bit more. It's always easy in hindsight. I don't particularly like criticising substitutions, but Frankie McAvoy played his Hail Mary, and Potts was one of those players, although he wasn't one of the triple sub. He came on in the 64th minute, and they sort of got lucky in the end. So there we go. 11 unbeaten, still 6 points clear with 7 games to go. We'll see how Swansea get on to know that distance to third as we move forward from here. But it's not the end of the world. We go on to Huddersfield at home on Tuesday night. Another team who are struggling. They play Brentford at lunchtime on Saturday. So they've got a bit less recovery time as well. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Norwich take out a bit of frustration on them on Tuesday night. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you thought of the game in the comments.